Chief and Project Veritas are at it again. They caught Google censoring again. I mean, this is nothing we didn't already know. I mean, they had them going back. I don't know how long it was. I think it was right after the last election in the states. With Google, people at Google saying about, oh, we're not going to let this happen again. Referring to, you know, censoring information that would help Trump and promoting information that wouldn't. And this is a really big issue. Like, this is a really big issue that people, I mean, for people on the left, they view it as benefiting them, so they don't really care. For people in the middle and for people on the right, like I always mention too, for whatever reason, people just don't want to. And I know there's a lot of exceptions to this rule, but I see it too much for me not to complain about it. Um, Too many people that just go along with it. Like they either just don't really care, or they make the whole, oh, they're private companies, even though I'm pretty sure, I mean, I mentioned this a lot before, but the whole private company argument, it makes sense to some degree, but it's very misleading, and there's a lot of contradictory ideas when it comes to that. I mean, first of all, being I believe Google has gotten taxpayer money before, which would make the whole private company argument go out the window. um, Number two, again, these are the same people that when you argue for, either it's the whole bake the cake scenario, or when you argue for a free society, they'll be the ones that argue, oh, well, under these circumstances, someone could just buy up all the bakeries and refuse, gay people service, or the, same thing goes in the other situation. Otherwise known as a monopoly. But Google and these big tech companies, especially Google, they're about the closest thing to being a monopoly in the modern day, right? Like, if you were to ask people what would be the best example of a company that has a monopoly in their industry, Google would arguably be the best argument. So it completely contradicts that idea of you have these people that are so worried about monopolies, right? Even when it's not even realistic for it to happen. But when there's actually a monopoly, all of a sudden they don't care, right? It just goes to show just how ignorant they are. And again, the other things being is that when it comes to these situations, they have to decide between being a publisher or a platform. If you're a publisher, which is what they are, you get the benefits of being able to censor, but you also get the downside of being able to be sued for people for defamatory stuff, for, if someone posts a death threat or that kind of stuff. Or you can be a platform. If you're a platform, you get the benefits of not being able to be sued, but on the flip side, you can't censor. And this is the problem, is that they want to have it both ways. And the people that defend them insist, oh no, they're a private company, they can do this. Well, I mean, Jack Dorsey, I believe he directly said to Dave Rubin about how, no, we don't censor. Now, again, obviously Jack Dorsey doesn't run Google, but it's a comparable example. So again, this is the problem, is that they want to they want to play it from both sides. They want the benefits of both, but they can't have it that way because it's not fair. Not to mention it's illegal, right? They have to pick between one or the other. And this is another big problem too, with people say, oh, just make them pick. Well, there's another big problem with that, in that they've been allowed to grow and gain the market cap that they like to enjoy, with the ability to play both sides. So it's incredibly unfair to competition to force them to pick a side when Google and Twitter and Facebook have been able to play it both ways. So, and again, honestly, this is one of the biggest issues of our time. I think the biggest issue right now is, how do we, get rid of this massive unemployment and people that are on the brink of, borderline homelessness coming out of this whole fake pandemic situation. I think that's the biggest issue. The next biggest issue probably is stuff like this, because if we lose free speech, we're going to lose everything in the end, because getting rid of free speech is the first thing that always happens in countries that lose everything. That's the one of the first things that happens, because if you have free speech, it's pretty hard for, a totalitarian or government to take over, or any bad stuff for that matter, because if you have free speech, And here's the thing: people in Canada like to pretend we have free speech. Whenever you question free speech in Canada, you have all these people, oh no, we have free speech, and they'll point to the charter, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the charter says. It doesn't matter what the Constitution and the states say. It only matters if the courts and the legal system holds it up, right? You need all three branches of government to support and to uphold a law or a right for it to actually be a right. So just because piece of paper says something it couldn't be any less meaningless unless it's held up. And that's the big problem is that you have these pieces of paper that say things, but the government, the legislative and the judicial, they're not holding up their end of the bargain. So that's the big problem. So again, this is going to get worse too, and people think this isn't happening in Canada either. Like, of course it's happening in Canada. Like, come on, like how ignorant do you have to be to think it's not happening in Canada? So anyway, the next story to bring up here is Alberta government from the Edmonton Journal here. Alberta government provinces to drop special pandemic powers that gave government ministers ability to make new laws. Now, again, this was a very scary precedent. I heavily criticized the UCP at the time for doing this. It's looking like they're going to get rid of it. But again, do I trust them? No, I don't trust them at all. The only caveat is I trust them more than the federal government and governments like the government in Ontario, like under Doug Ford, for the simple reason that the government of Alberta has at the very least hinted around that they understand that the whole lockdown and pandemic situation that we've grossly overreacted to it. They've at least beat around the bush when it came to that, which I do appreciate. They should go a lot further, but that may be political suicide. And again, that's the big problem. One of the many endless problems when it comes to politics nowadays is that there's many things that if the governments were to tell the public the truth about, they would lose power. They would lose support. I mean, look at New York. You have Cuomo's approval rating went up when he literally handled things the worst out of any state. Like people make, oh, it's population density. No, it's because they put sick people in nursing homes, right? It had nothing to do with population density. Something tells me that the average person per square foot or square meter, square whatever you want to call it, in a nursing home in New York isn't much different than someone in a nursing home in Los Angeles or Chicago or any other big city. Something tells me that the rooms in those and the hallways and the common areas are pretty much the same size. So again, that's such a terrible argument. I don't even know what to say. So anyway, this is a good sign. It's a good sign that they're doing this. They never should have did it in the first place, which is why I don't give them much sympathy and much credit. But at the very least, they are getting rid of it. And the good news is that the federal government under Justin Trudeau is pushing for these internment camps or COVID internment camps. So yeah, we'll see as far as that goes. We'll see. But anyway, the next thing to bring up here is from Linda Matthews here. And she says Netherlands states there is no pandemic and is starting a lawsuit. It's just a flu. Now, again, is it a flu? Is it a pandemic? I'm no expert, so I'm not going to say. The one thing that I do know is we have, as a society, grossly overreacted to this. We have grossly overreacted to this. The WHO has been lying for most of the time. China massively deceived the rest of the world. It's looking like China was just reporting, making things look as bad as possible back in, January and February to scare the rest of the world into overreacting to it. And here's the thing. China didn't actually report that high in numbers. Most people just thought, oh, they were lying about it. For all we know, maybe those numbers were accurate, and they were just making it appear like it was a lot worse. And again, that's a big problem. I still think they underreported, but maybe they didn't underreport by as much as what one may have thought. Like I say, maybe they were just um, pumping out propaganda to make it appear worse and worse and worse so the rest of the world overreacted. And again, when it comes to China, their main goal right now is to become the world superpower. They want to overtake the States, they want to overtake any possible competitor, and they knew, because China is very good at this kind of stuff, that if they made this appear, worse than it actually was, given how emotional and paranoid the average person is, that we would overreact to it. And I think that's what happened. And I think there's one thing that's absolutely undeniable in that we overreacted to this. If anything, we grossly overreacted to this. There's no question that we overreacted to this. To me, you are absolutely insane to suggest otherwise. For the simple reason being that the lockdowns clearly had no effect on the spread. The mask mandates clearly had no effect on the spread. The social distancing is a complete pseudoscience. Pretty much everything we did either had no effect or such a small effect that it's barely measurable. And again, like on the flip side, we have double digit unemployment. We have, a quarter of Albertans who are broke, an unexpected bill, they may become homeless or at the very least have to go into massive amounts of debt to pay their bills. So again, um, like I always mention too, you have the people that support the lockdowns that they like to pretend that there's literally no downside to lockdowns, but there's massive downside. There is massive, massive, massive downside, and yeah, that's the big problem. So again, it's good that more and more areas and more people are pushing back against this. The problem being is that it's not enough. And I think the bigger problem being is that you have too many people who their solution to the problems we now face isn't going to fix the problems. It's only going to make it worse. You look at all these people's solutions to all the problems. Is if you especially the left, right? The left, it's all you got to do is just tax the rich, right? That's all you got to do to make up the gap in our debt. But Canada has like what 40 billionaires, and our debt this year has gone up almost a half $1 trillion. Just do that, even if you took $1 billion from all the billionaires, which is completely unrealistic. There's no way you would ever get that money out of them. Doesn't matter what you do. Even if you did that, that's what 10% of the money. It's not even close. This is the one thing that the left, I just cannot stand about the left, that they are so wrong on. It's not even funny that they genuinely believe that if you just raise taxes a little bit on the rich and corporate taxes, then you would make up the entire gap. You'd be able to pay for all the stuff we want. But it wouldn't even come close. It wouldn't even come close. Like I say, maybe 10% max. The only solution right now is to cut spending. That is the only solution, but that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen because any government that proposes cutting spending is going to be viciously vilified as you hate the poor and you want people to die, when that's complete bunk. That's complete insanity. Like, if you're a family and you're like you're an individual and you're making 25,000 to $30,000 a year and you live in an expensive area, that's reality. You have to be living, bare bones, pinching pennies. That's just the reality, and that's the same thing that we are as a government. We can't afford to be spending at the levels we're spending. It's not realistic. It does, like I say, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And if we don't do that, we're going to be in for a world of hurt. And again, this is the problem too, that we're doing it all for no reason. Like, we're doing it all for no reason. There is no reason to have anything other than very minor restrictions when it comes to this whole situation. The evidence has pointed to that for months. It's not like it's a new thing. Again, so long story short, it's good that we have, you know, fairly prominent countries admitting that this is complete bunk. And uh, people who knowingly lied or overstated the severity of this, they should face consequences. Like, they should absolutely face consequences, because this has gone way too far. Like, if one of these, government doctors or politicians implemented lockdowns but got rid of them in like May, yeah, I still would vehemently disagree and probably not support them. But at the very least, they can still make the good faith argument. At the very least, they can still do that. But any government who supported lockdowns past May, any government who supported, or any doctor who supported mask mandates at any point, anyone who supported this social distancing, anyone who supported those things is either completely ignorant of reality, or they're lying and manipulating people. Either way, they're wrong. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on BitChute. Make sure you follow me on Parler. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.